Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just gave a little bit of a recruiting update, a ton of big time commitments, and a ton coming this weekend that we will update you on where all those end up at the end of at probably towards the beginning of next week. But let's get into some lingering questions around the top 25 teams, and we'll dip just a little bit below the top 25 today. But let's get into this and let's start over in Southern California with USC. And my biggest question is, how big of a difference maker is D'Anton Lynn? How big of a difference can he make in year one with the current personnel that USC has and with the current structure that they have in that program? Because that was what he was brought there to do, right? He wasn't brought there just to fix the defensive scheme. He was brought there to fix the mentality, to fix the energy, to fix the strength and conditioning in some ways, and to fix just the amount of players that they have on that roster in the personnel. So I think they have players that can make plays. I don't necessarily think they have enough by any means to be where they want to be going forward and be a constant contender in the playoff going forward, but they have some guys that can make some plays, no doubt about it. When you talk about Bear Alexander, he's a very athletically inclined guy. He is going to make a number of different plays this upcoming year, but really does have to be a beast if they want to be the defense that they are capable of being. Kamari Ramsey's another guy that followed Lynn over from UCLA, very talented. Easton Arnold Mascaneras is another guy to watch there in the linebacker position. So they have guys. It's not like USC is out there with a bunch of guys that should be playing at Tulane. But at the end of the day, it is an uphill battle. There is so many things that have to be changed, not only about that defense when scheme and personnel, but behind the scenes with the energy they come to practice with the intensity that they play with. And it feels like a lot of that stuff has been put into place. It feels like fall camp has been a little bit more intense than it has been in years past over there at USC. But at the end of the day, they need a really solid season, and it doesn't have to be leaps and bounds for this defense. I've talked about this before. They just have to be opportunistic. You're going to have an offense on the other side that's going to score points. I promise you that. So just put the ball back in their hands. Get a couple of turnovers here and there and make sure that you're in these games late so your offense can make plays down the stretch. So I think it's one of those that it's not where they want it to be right now by any means, but say he improves them from, I believe they were 116 a year ago in total defense, up to 85. If he does that, there's a chance they win 8-9 games, and then they're off running and recruiting. So this is going to be a little bit of a longer battle, but as of right now, I think D'Anton Lynn's going to make enough of a difference to make sure that a big difference can be made down the road. Moving on to North Carolina State, and the biggest thing I have here is, can you get Grayson McCall back to 2021 Grayson McCall? Because if you remember that year for him, it was downright special. He was over at Coastal Carolina, and it was him and Isaiah Likely just tearing up defenses up every which way from Tuesday. It was insane to watch this guy go to work. And now he's in a situation that is roughly as good, if not way better, than what he had in 2021 at Coastal Carolina. When you have guys like Kevin Concepcion, Noah Rogers, Justin Jolie, all beasts on the outside. And then Jordan Waters is probably the best running back that he's had to deal with, but also NC State's had in quite some time. So a huge pickup for a number of these different transfer guys that they brought in. Kevin Concepcion was obviously already there, but you look at all the guys on the outside that he's going to be able to throw to. There's a world where he gets back to that 2021 Grayson McCall, where he gets back to that guy, and we can see all the special things that made him one of the stories of college football that year. So it's going to be really interesting to watch this one. I think that Tennessee game in week 2 is going to be incredible to watch, and Robert and I, the offensive coordinator, to see how all of this unfolds. He's having to put a lot of stuff together. It's a lot of talent, so it's a good problem to have, but definitely a lot of things that they got to put together, and most importantly, just got to get Grayson McCall playing that 2021 football again. If that happens, this is absolutely an ACC contender. Moving on to Iowa, my question is, do they have a quarterback? Plain and simple. Do they have a guy that is going to be able to win them games this year? Because they did just name Cade McNamara the starter for the opener against Illinois State. I think he's going to play well there, and if he doesn't, my lord, I don't know what's happening over there at quarterback position, but at the end of the day, I do think he's going to play fine. Can he sustain that through entire season is something that I don't feel very confident in. And the other guy they have on that roster is Brendan Sullivan. I've talked about him a little bit. I think he's the guy that's likely going to end up taking this job at some point this season. I don't know when that comes, but I do think he's the guy that just gives them a little bit better of a chance to win. Now, I feel pretty confident in saying this is not going to be a good offense. I feel fairly confident in saying this is going to be a bad offense, but if they take a small step forward, I mean minuscule, I mean 1% step forward, literally just tiptoe forward, you're going to be able to win a couple more games. And this is a very good defense, one of the best defenses that Kirk Ferentz has had in quite some time over at Iowa, and they're going to be able to do plenty of stuff on that side of the ball. They just need a quarterback that can execute. So right now, I don't necessarily know if they have one. Maybe it's that argument that if you have two quarterbacks, you have none. Well, I don't even know if they have one. So at the end of the day, this is a huge worry for them, and it doesn't seem like it's remotely solved throughout fall camp, and definitely something to watch as they head into the season. Moving on to the teams that are outside the top 25 but are right there. Louisville is a team to watch this upcoming year, and really, can Tyler Shuck stay on the field is really the only thing for this team. They're very, very talented at a number of different positions. Obviously, Colin Lacey going down with an injury. I believe he's out 6 to 8 weeks. Definitely going to be a tough thing for this team, but this is a very talented squad, and Tyler Shuck is at the very center of it, and the problem is he's had a really tough time staying on the field. Last year, he played 4 games for Texas Tech. I don't think in his career he's ever played more than 7 games in a year. Now, in that year, he went 5-2, so he does win games when he's out there on the field. He does play some really good games. He got wins over Oklahoma and Ole Miss that year, so it's not like he's a bad quarterback. It's not like he's capable of executing this offense, but he's got to stay on the field. And frankly, he's probably got to elevate his game just a little bit, because in some of those games that he lost last year especially, it was very up and down. It was very shaky from time to time, and it was very kind of variable when you walked onto that field. So as long as he's on the field, you feel pretty good, but also he likely does need to up his ability just a little bit, especially with some of the running back troubles that they're having over there at Louisville right now. So definitely something to watch. And then that's another picture of Tyler Shuck. Virginia Tech is the other team I want to talk about, and the biggest thing here is comfort the thing that takes Kyron Jones and Virginia Tech over the hump? Is that the thing that defines the ACC this upcoming year? And it's something I've talked about kind of on a grandiose scale before, where the ACC has Cam Rising coming in, DJ coming in, Grayson McCall coming in, a number of other transfer quarterbacks walking into this conference for the very first time, and then SMU coming in for the very first time to this conference. Is being in your offense for 1 year, is being in your conference for 1 year the most important thing for quarterbacks in the ACC this upcoming year? Because Kyron Jones is as comfortable as can be. He might be as comfortable as anyone in their offense in the conference, other than maybe Haynes King, because that dude looks like he's just exactly where he needs to be at all times. But regardless, Kyron Jones is one of those guys that can totally take over the ACC race. He can be the story of college football. He can be the guy that absolutely tears people apart. And right now, he has comfort with his wide receivers. He can go through every read or check that you need him to. He has everything in this playbook essentially in the back of his head, and he doesn't have to think about it too much. That is huge going into the season, and it's a very manageable schedule. So overall, I think Kyron Jones could be the story of the entire college football season. I think they could win the ACC. I think they could go into the college football playoff, and if they do, I tend to believe it's going to be because of that comfortability that he has in this offense. So definitely something to watch, and one of those that I think Kyron Jones is just an outright ridiculous athlete, and if I'm betting on any specific player more than Kyron Jones, I have not found him yet. So very much like this player, and I think it might just be that the comfortability in this offense makes the total difference for this guy. Moving on to Boise State, the biggest question is very, very clear. What do they need to do to secure that spot in the CFP? They are the going favorite for that spot in the CFP and definitely should be going into this season. A very talented team, particularly on defense, has a very, very good group over there. And I do think when you have Ashton Jainty, one of the best players and running backs in the country, a lot of things can go wrong and you can still play really good football. But Boise State, as far as I can tell, if you go 12-1, you're in. I no matter what, honestly. I think I've said this on here before. An undefeated Liberty wouldn't get in, almost bar none, if you were to ask me. I understand there's a reality where maybe there's a ton of 2-loss group of 5 teams and you put them in there, but at the end of the day, if there's a 12-1 team and then there's 13-0 Liberty, give me the 12-1 team 10 times out of 10. But Boise State, if they go 12-1, they've lost to Oregon. Obviously, that's not necessarily a bad loss by any means, but then they've run the table from there. And I think that would be very, very clear they would be in the title. Now the question becomes, who are the teams that could possibly get in their way? Because there's a couple other teams that could go 12-1 during the stretch. You want to talk about Memphis or Tulane or App State, a couple other teams that absolutely could go 12-1, and then you're having a conversation because Memphis could have their only loss to Florida State, and then Tulane could have their only loss to Oklahoma, but have a win over Kansas State because they have both those guys on their schedule. So if either of those teams go 12-1, this would be the really interesting conversation. If Boise State went 12-1 and no one else did, and then Liberty went 13-0, I don't even think that's a conversation, if I'm being totally honest. But at the end of the day, I do think it's going to be really interesting to watch this. I would say if you get to 12-1, you are likely in almost bar none, but maybe a Memphis or a Tulane makes this thing a little bit more interesting. Now, if you go undefeated, you might just be one of the auto bids, frankly, because if you beat Oregon at their home, then there's no question that I would put you in that position. But at the end of the day, it's going to be a really interesting thing to watch. The group of five is just impossible to get a beat on, so I tried my best, but I definitely think a 12-1 season would very likely put Boise State in that CFP field. But let's take our final break here, and when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of a headline wrap-up, just kind of do quick rapid fire among a number of really interesting stories that came out throughout this week. So stick around, and we'll be right back with that.